"We refuse to take care of your kids," then Mother declared. "Your kids don't deserve us." They chuckled. My sister's children laughed. But within 3 days, my WhatsApp was flooded with messages. My parents were never affectionate. From childhood, it was obvious who they favored. My sister Sarah received all their support, attention, and praise for things no one else would have been acknowledged for. I was the backup, the one expected to manage on my own. And when I became a parent, nothing changed. I have twin boys. They mean the world to me. I've raised them mostly alone since the separation, and I've never looked back. But being a single parent isn't simple, especially when your own parents treat your children as a burden they never agreed to bear. Over time, I tried to remain polite. I ignored many things, the indirect remarks, the clear preference for Sarah's kids, the calls only when they needed something. Usually it was money. Then they'd suddenly recall how much they cared. But that meal 3 weeks ago, that's when the truth became undeniable. I asked if they could watch my boys for a weekend. I had an unexpected trip. Nothing major, just a couple of days. My sons were in the next room, quietly working on a puzzle. I began explaining, and midway, my father smirked and said, "We won't look after your kids." My mother didn't pause. "Your kids don't deserve us." And they laughed. Both of them. Then Sarah's kids, who were glued to their phones, glanced up and joined in. No one intervened. No one acted like it was inappropriate. I left. I took my boys and walked out as if the house were burning. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. My heart was shattered, and I felt humiliated. I was furious, and for the first time in years, I'd had enough. Sarah called the next day. "She's different from you. She always has been. She's been my only ally through all this, constantly reminding me that I deserve better than what our parents offer." She tried to soothe me, but even she didn't defend them this time. She just said she understood. That's when I decided I was done playing their game. I cut off their access to everything. The streaming services they used, the shared music subscription, the grocery account linked to my card, and most importantly, the bank account they dipped into whenever they faced a little issue. They never thanked me. They only remembered me when bills stacked up. So, I ended it all. Silently. Without warning. Without a word. 3 days later, my phone blew up. First, my mother. Dozens of messages. Then my father. Then a long dormant group chat revived. They weren't subtle. Demands, guilt trips, rants about how ungrateful I was, and after all they'd done for me. Messages like gunfire, one after another. But not a single apology. Not one mention of what they'd said about my sons. They didn't even ask if the boys were okay. They just wanted access again. To my accounts, to my money, to me. That's when it hit me. Without the funds, I meant nothing to them. Sarah told me I'd done the right thing. And I knew she was right. But I had no idea how far they'd go, or what they were capable of once they realized they couldn't use me anymore. After I locked them out, there was silence for days. No calls, no texts, not even a sarcastic meme in the group chat. Just quiet. It was eerie, but I knew it wouldn't last. My parents don't handle being ignored, especially when money's involved. Then came the holidays. I almost didn't go. Sarah pleaded with me, saying she'd be there and didn't want to face them alone. I told her I'd consider it, but I knew the boys deserved some normalcy, at least for the day. They'd been through enough. So, we went. It was tense from the moment we arrived. My mother didn't greet the boys. My father gave me that phony grin he uses when he wants something. Sarah met me at the door, her expression saying this was a bad idea. But we were already there. Then came the gifts. Everyone received something. Sarah's kids got pricey sneakers, new phones, stacks of gift cards. I tried not to mind, I really did. But when it was my son's turn, my mother handed each of them a box of cheap chocolates and announced, loud enough for all to hear, that it was from a kind father. Not their father, just a kind father. As if I hadn't spent years doing everything for them. As if I hadn't been their only parent. My boys looked puzzled. They didn't complain, just held the boxes as if waiting for something more. I wanted to grab them and leave, but I held back for their sake. Sarah saw it all and didn't hide her disgust. After that day, I told Sarah I was done for good. No more family gatherings, no more pretending. The boys deserved better than people who treated them like they didn't exist. Months later, I had to travel again. Sarah was abroad, and I had no one else. Against my better judgment, I asked my parents to watch the boys. They agreed. They said it was fine. I didn't trust them, but I hoped, just this once, they'd do right by us. When I returned a week later, I knocked, expecting to find them inside with the boys. Instead, my sons answered alone. I thought maybe my parents had stepped out, but no. They'd taken Sarah's kids and 2 friends to an amusement park, overnight, twice. My boys had been alone in the house for 2 full days. They told me everything as soon as I walked in. My youngest said they'd been told not to tell me, that Grandma and Grandpa said I'd overreact and ruin everything. I didn't yell. I just sat in my car for an hour. I couldn't fathom how anyone could do that, how 2 adults could leave young children alone without a second thought. When I finally called them, they didn't deny it. My mother said they were tired of babysitting. My father said my sons weren't like Sarah's kids, that they were difficult and ungrateful. And then came the line I'll never forget. "We're the best grandparents. We don't owe your kids anything." That was it. The final, irreversible end. I hung up and blocked them. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew this. They'd never see my boys again. But just when I thought it couldn't get worse, it did, in ways I never imagined. I didn't sleep the night I learned what they'd done. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my boys alone in that house, heating leftovers, locking doors, and pretending they weren't scared. I kept thinking, what if something had happened? What if one of them got hurt or sick and couldn't reach me? I called Sarah the next morning. I didn't hide my rage. She was furious too. She offered to confront them, but I told her not to bother. I was done trying to fix anything. A week later, the family chat erupted again. My parents played the victim. My mother sent a long message claiming they weren't cut out for full-time childcare and that I never appreciated their efforts. She said watching the boys was exhausting and that they didn't bond with them like they did with Sarah's kids. Then came the part that ignited something in me. She wrote that my sons were cold and distant and that maybe it reflected my parenting. My father added that they were better off without someone as resentful as me influencing them. It was as if they'd projected everything they disliked about me onto my sons. That's when I realized they didn't just prefer Sarah's kids, they actively despised mine. I deleted the group chat. Soon, the extended family got involved. Some relatives reached out asking for both sides. But it wasn't about sides. It was about 2 little boys being treated poorly while their cousins enjoyed trips and expensive gifts. I told them everything. Most didn't respond. One aunt said I was overreacting. That's when I cut her off too. Sarah stood by me through it all. She invited my boys over more, making them feel welcome. She didn't try to fix things. She just showed up. I owe her for that. But my parents weren't finished. One night, about 2 weeks after I'd blocked them, I found a letter in my mailbox, handwritten, from my father. 4 pages of delusion. It began with the usual, "We've given you so much," and ended with a list of everything they'd ever bought me, from school supplies to childhood birthday cakes, even listing prices. At the bottom, a line read, "You'll regret this when your sons grow up and ask why they didn't have real grandparents." I burned the letter in a metal bowl on my balcony. I thought that was the end. But then, word reached my boys' school. One of Sarah's kids, likely without malice, mentioned what had happened. Soon my sons came home with questions, asking why their grandparents didn't like them, if they'd done something wrong. I told them the truth, gently, that not all family deserves a place in our lives, that love is shown, not claimed. They nodded as if they understood, but I could see the hurt in their eyes, and it broke me a little more each time. I thought the worst was over, but my parents had one last move. Something small, something deliberate, something that escalated everything. 2 months passed without a word from them. It was peaceful. Strangely, I began to feel hopeful. The boys were doing better. Sarah was around more. Life felt calm for the first time in years. Then one afternoon my landlord called. Someone had filed a complaint, a formal report, about the environment my sons were being raised in. Anonymous, of course. He wouldn't say who, but I knew. The claims were absurd. That my home was unsafe. That I neglected my children. That I had anger issues. Every accusation was a twisted version of things my parents knew were false. They'd taken private conversations and weaponized them. I laughed when I hung up. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe their desperation. They weren't just cutting ties, they were trying to destroy me. I thought it couldn't get worse. Then I got a letter from Child Protective Services. The complaint had triggered an investigation. Someone had officially labeled me a neglectful parent. I sat there, holding the letter for what felt like an hour. It didn't feel real. I'd spent years protecting, caring for, and loving these boys. Now I had to let strangers inspect my home and question my parenting because of them. The visit happened 3 days later. The social worker was professional and saw through the lies, but I still had to stand there while they checked the fridge, the bedrooms, and asked my sons personal questions. My oldest teared up when asked if he felt safe at home. I'll never forgive them. A week later, the case was closed. The report was marked unfounded, but the harm was done. My sons were confused and scared. I spent days rebuilding their sense of security, that invisible safety net every child needs. And just as we started to move on, something else happened, something I never expected. Sarah called one morning and told me to sit down. Our parents had rewritten their wills, not just adjusted, completely redone. Everything went to Sarah's kids. Everything. My sons weren't even mentioned. She only found out because her lawyer called by mistake. That wasn't even the worst part. In the notes, they'd written that their legacy should reflect the family's values. Below that, a list. Strength, discipline, pride, and loyalty. Loyalty. As if cutting me out, abandoning my sons, and reporting me were acts of family loyalty. Sarah was livid. She confronted them, said she wanted no part of that money, that she'd make her own way, and that if they ever contacted my sons again, she'd expose them to the entire family. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. One night, a week after Sarah's call, I was tucking the boys in when I noticed something taped to our door. A photo. A printed picture of my sons at a school event earlier that week, taken from a distance. No note, no message, just the photo. I stood outside in the cold for a long time, scanning the street. I saw no one. And for the first time in this ordeal, I wasn't just angry, I was afraid. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the door in the dark, a baseball bat beside me, watching the street. Every car made my pulse race, every noise made me tense. This wasn't just pettiness anymore, it was something darker. Watching my sons from afar and leaving this on my door like a threat? That was twisted. I didn't know if it was my parents or someone they'd sent. But whoever it was, they wanted me to feel powerless. And for a few hours, I did. Until I realized I'd been fighting alone. I decided to do something I'd never considered before. I'd fight back. Not to hurt them, but to expose them. I wanted everyone to see who they really were, especially those they still fooled with their devoted grandparents act. Their friends, their clubs, their church community. I gathered everything. Old texts, screenshots, emails begging for money, voicemails with veiled threats, even Sarah's copy of the will. I printed the CPS documents, including the unfounded ruling. I compiled it all into a sharp, concise file. Then I emailed it anonymously to their pastor, their retirement club, their neighborhood board, even the alumni group my father cherished. At the top, one sentence. Do these people represent your values? Sarah found out 2 days later. She called me in tears, begging me to stop. She said our parents were frantic, calling everyone to explain. My mother allegedly fainted when her church questioned her about child neglect. My father threatened to sue the sender. Their reputation, everything they cared about, was crumbling. Sarah said I'd made my point, that they were humiliated, that they were already paying for what they'd done. She didn't defend them, she just didn't want it to escalate further. She said they were broken. I told her I hadn't even started, because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about making them stop. But after that photo on the door, something shifted in me. I wasn't just protecting my sons anymore. I wanted them to learn that silence isn't strength, that there's no honor in shielding people who treat you poorly. Days later, Sarah visited. She hugged the boys, then pulled me aside and said she'd convinced them to leave us alone, that they'd agreed, that if I let it go, they'd stay away. For a moment, it felt like closure, until the next morning when I found my car parked right outside, keyed on all sides. The word liar was carved deep into the hood. I left the car untouched for 2 days. I let the word liar sit there like a badge because they thought I'd be ashamed. I wasn't. If anything, it proved what I already knew. These people couldn't feel remorse. They wanted to punish me for refusing to play along, for choosing my sons over them. But they didn't understand. I wasn't afraid of their hatred. I'd been afraid for too long of being tied to them at all. I didn't seek revenge. Not really. I told the truth and let it fall where it may. They buried themselves by trying to hurt me. After dropping the boys at school that Monday, I took the car to a shop and had it repainted entirely. Fresh paint. No trace of the word. I paid up front. No reminders. No remnants of people who didn't belong in our story. That night, I did what I should have done years ago. I erased them. New number. New email. I removed their names from all emergency contacts. School, doctor, insurance. I left the family group chat for good. Blocked every number. Deleted every photo of them. Scrubbed them out like a stain. Then I went further. I called a lawyer. I'd already named Sarah as the boys' guardian, but I made it official. Ironclad. If anything happened to me, my sons would go to her, not the people who left them alone for 2 days and silenced them. I made it legal. No loopholes, no contact. Done. I told Sarah everything. She didn't argue. She just asked what else I needed. That's who she is. She didn't ask me to forgive them this time. A week later, I got a letter. Not handwritten, typed, formal, like they were keeping their distance even as they reached out. It wasn't an apology. The word sorry never appeared. It was filled with excuses. Things escalated. Emotions ran high. Misunderstandings on both sides. They even claimed Sarah had betrayed them, as if she were the villain for standing by me. But one line stood out. "We never thought you'd cut us off. You always forgave us before." That hit me. It laid bare their entire dynamic with me. They didn't love me. They relied on my tolerance. They treated it like a given. But not this time. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I didn't even tell Sarah. I printed the letter, folded it, and locked it away. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Weeks passed, then months, and something unexpected happened. People my parents had bragged to, neighbors, church friends, old club members, started reaching out to Sarah. They weren't seeking drama. They asked if the stories were true, if I'd really cut ties for good. Sarah didn't elaborate, but she didn't lie either. People noticed the distance. My parents stopped attending events. They weren't invited anymore. Their image, the one they'd polished so carefully, was tarnished. And the weight of their actions was catching up in ways no one predicted. They weren't angry anymore. They were ashamed. The last I heard, my father resigned from a volunteer board. My mother hadn't posted online in months. They'd gone quiet, which, for them, spoke volumes. As for me and the boys, we're thriving. They don't ask about their grandparents anymore. They don't mention them. I think they're starting to forget, and I think that's okay. We're building something new, something not based on guilt or obligation or control, just love, just the three of us. And maybe that's the real ending. Not vengeance, not a dramatic showdown or an apology that never came, just peace. And them where they belong, far behind us. If you enjoyed this story and felt the emotions behind it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and heartfelt stories. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.